I just want to say one thing to the fans and everybody in Golf Wang Nation. I'm sorry. I'm extremely sorry. But I promise you one thing. A lot of goodwill will come out of this. You have never seen any player, any fantasy manager in the entire country manage as hard as I will the rest of the season. You'll never see somebody push the rest of the team as hard as I will push everybody the rest of the season. You'll never see a team play harder than we will the rest of the season. God bless. That was Tim Tebow from 2008. So we're gonna ride that quote. I will not lose again the rest of the season, and I will make that promise. Last week was really rough. It is my lowest output in a regular season game in my history of the league. And that can't happen. That can't happen against the number 1 team. That can't happen against the number 10 team. It can't happen. We go in with that mentality and it's going to be bad. 67.3. Almost doubled up by Riley. I was doubled up by half the league at this point. Embarrassing is what that was. So, with that out of the way, let's jump right into the rankings. No change at the top. We still have Riley at number 1. He's 5-0, 647 points scored. He looks unstoppable. And he's got pretty cupcake schedule coming up. Number 2, Charlie slotted into the 2 spot with Cameron and myself dropping back down. So Charlie is the lone 4-1 team, firmly in the number 2 spot. And then we go with the cluster of 3 and 2s here with Wade leading the pack, Cameron in 4th place with the head-to-head against myself, and I think he beat Andrew. Maybe he plays Andrew this week. And then we got me in 5th, Andrew in 6th, Tim at 2 and 3 and 7th, coming off of huge back-to-back weeks. John at 1 and 4, just some really, really bad breaks. Ashley at 1 and 4, and then Trevor is the lone winless team at 0 and 5. Beautiful symmetry in the league. I believe John pointed that out earlier this week. But 5-0, 4-1, and then a whole cluster of 3 and 2 and 2 and 3s. Lot of parity going on in the league. Well, let's take a look at some of the waiver wire ads this week. So we had a lot of kickers. John repicking up Isaiah Pacheco, which as a Clyde Edwards-Helaire haver, I'm really nervous about it. I mean, he was splitting carries the whole way against who'd they even play? The Raiders on Monday night. I mean, not that it would have made a difference in my game, but Edwards-Helaire did come an inch short of the goal line twice, which led to 2 Travis Kelce touchdowns. So maybe it's not quite time to hit the panic button, but my hands on it, fingers on it for sure. Tim added Alec Pearson, wide receiver out of Indy. Riley added Eno Benjamin, who looks like he could be either splitting carries, maybe taking over the Cardinals backfield. Wade went with Jacoby Myers, which the Patriots stink, so we'll see how that works out. Cameron added Hayden Hurst, looking for a little tight end filler. Tim, in normal fashion, adding the highest scorer of the previous week, which he loves to do. Went with Taysom Hill, which not a bad pickup at tight end the rest of the year. Who did he drop for Taysom? That's the real question. He dropped Rondale Moore, so looks like Tim's rolling with the controversial 3 tight end team with Kittle, Waller, and now Hill. John went with Geno Smith, looking for finally giving up on Russell Wilson. Trevor, as the number 1 on the waiver priority, got the gold here with Kenneth Walker, the 3rd, after the news that Rashad Penny will be out for the season. And he looked good in his last week as the number 1 back, 88 yards and a touchdown. So that's how the waivers kind of shook out. So let's just jump right into the matchups here. We do start the bye weeks this week, so that's where this is nut cutting time. This is where things get interesting. This is where you got to be smart, make your moves. And we're gonna start with Raleigh, just like we always do, because we start with the number 1 team, and he's gonna be the number 1 team forever and the rest of our lives, and we're just gonna have to deal with that. And it's just disgusting, is what it is, frankly. So Raleigh's playing Ashley this week. The projections here have it 120 to 100 even for Ashley. Well, 100.21. We call it 100 even. So about a 20-point spread here, and honestly, that's the first time I look at a projection and think, yeah, that sounds right. Ashley's had a rough couple of weeks. Last week, she would have been the lowest scorer if I didn't have a historically bad week. She had 76. The week before that, 114, decent week. I mean, she's put together some good weeks here and there. 81 in week 3. And then I think week 2 is her big one where she got her win over Trevor, actually. So little Stevenson crime, but that was the week that Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill just went bananas in the fourth quarter. So 100 sounds like a good number. Problem is she never scores 100. It's looking like it's either 70 or 140. A lot of boom or bust going on. We got Lamb Jack. There's not really much else to say about him. The Giants look frisky, they look good, but they I don't think they're going to hold up to Baltimore. Baltimore's defense may make it interesting, but I think Lamb Jack runs up and down the field on them. The Tom Brady on the other side. I mean, Tom Brady has had a long history of hating Pittsburgh, so we could see him come out and sling the ball, and the Steelers are not good. Defense, offense, whatever. TJ Watt's still out. They're real bad. Tom Brady, I think, had a decent week last week as well. Yeah, I mean, he's gone 25 and 19 in back-to-back weeks, so he's kind of rounding out into form. He's got a lot of his weapons back. I think he could be poised for a big week. But when you got Lamar Jackson sitting on the other side, the upside of Lamar Jackson is just too high to overcome, I think. He's had a couple bad weeks in a row, but before that, 20, 42, 39. I mean, and the bad weeks came against good defenses in Buffalo and Cincinnati. The Giants, I don't think, are quite on that level as far as defense goes. They're good, not great. Jumping into the running backs here, James Conner gets a really, really favorable matchup in Seattle. He is listed as questionable, but didn't practice on Wednesday, so there's a chance he doesn't play. They're calling him day to day, so there's a chance he doesn't suit up on Sunday. And if he doesn't, I assume probably Kareem Hunt getting slotted in there. Because I don't think you take a risk on Antonio Gibson. With him playing tonight, and then if James Conner is able to suit up, but Kareem Hunt sitting down there, ready to be slotted in, and one can make the argument he should be anyway. And then on the other side, you have Benjamin. You have the guy that if Conner can't suit up, you have the guy that's going to get most of the touches. And that's Riley's kind of flyer this week. I was going to say bye week flyer, but no, he's just straight up starting him over Ezekiel Elliott. I mean, the tough matchup against the Eagles, I get it, but over Zeke, that's interesting. I mean, Zeke hasn't looked good all season. He's got one game over 10 points. He scored one touchdown all season. Tony Pollard looks like he's taking over the role. Riley's going Benjamin. Problem with Riley is he's got about to be 4 dominant wide receivers with Evans, Kupp, Chase, and Hopkins coming back from his suspension pretty soon. David Montgomery for Ashley, I actually love this week. I mean, Washington is a real bad defense. Justin Fields still can't really throw the ball. I mean, somebody put the stat earlier that he's got 49 completions on the year. Cooper Kupp by himself has 49 receptions. So, they're not exactly going to come out and sling the ball, but I think they can move the ball and put up points on Washington. And if that's the case, it's going to be on the back of David Montgomery. Kind of touched on Riley's wide receivers earlier. I mean, Evans, problem here for Ashley is if Tom Brady has a big day, you would assume Evans does too. There's enough targets in Tampa where that doesn't necessarily have to be true with Godwin, Scotty Miller, Cameron Brate look good. There's a couple other options. Lenny could pop off. But Mike Evans is the number one receiver down there. So if Tom Brady's popping off, that probably means Mike Evans is too. Deebo Samuel is going to he might actually own the city of Atlanta after this week. He is going to do some nasty things to that Atlanta defense. In their home, it's not going to be pretty. So I think Deebo Samuel is going to pop off this week. Jalen Waddle is still a huge question mark. I mean, Jalen Waddle himself isn't, but who the hell is going to throw to him? I don't even remember the guy's name that was thrown to him. Do they have it in here? Was it Skylar Thompson? 7th round rookie out of, I believe it was Kansas State. So yeah, that could be used throwing to him. Teddy Bridgewater is still questionable. But with all the concussion stuff going on, I don't think he's gonna play. And I've seen a little bit of news that there's a chance Tua could suit up this weekend, but kind of the same as last week. Like I don't know how you can risk it. And without Tua, I mean Jalen Waddle is just pedestrian at best. 4 or 5 points in the week that Tua had the really really bad injury. 4 points last week. I don't know how you trust Jalen Waddle without Tua. If you look at the tight end matchup, it's actually a decent one. It's kind of a matchup of like that second tier of tight ends, Goddard and Higbee. Really good targets. Decent quarterbacks that like to throw the ball kind of over the middle in the short intermediate pass game. Higbee with a better matchup in Carolina. Goddard's got to go up against Dallas. But Dallas kind of lives on the pass rush, and that could bode well for Goddard. Dallas is getting to Jalen pretty soon, and he's got to dump off. I actually like that. And then we got the really interesting one. New Orleans defense is pretty good. And we have opposite of each other, Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. Now you look at that and you think, well, obviously Chase is the number one in that offense. Problem is he gets so much attention that it just opens everything up for T. Higgins. Jamar Chase currently on the year is wide receiver 13. T. Higgins is wide receiver 25. So, I mean, there is some separation there, but a lot of that too is T. Higgins didn't play last week. He missed an entire week. Before that, he had a pretty bad week one, a 3.7. The whole Bengals had a bad week. I mean, just for reference, Chase in that game, I misclicked. Hold on. Chase in that game had 23.9. So, but that was like all in the fourth quarter when he just kind of took the game over. So Chase so far has had 24, 8.3, 9.7, 10, and 8.5. Higgins, just for kind of comparison's sake, 3.7, he had the bad week, and 16, 11, 21. I mean, he's been arguably more consistent now. When Chase decides he wants to go off, he's going to go off, and he'll put up 25 to 30. But Higgins has kind of been the consistent threat there, and obviously, like I said, he missed last week, so kind of throw out the overall rankings there. It's a really interesting one to keep an eye on, especially if they're going to have Lattimore shadow Chase. I mean, that's going to just open the entire offense up for T. Higgins. He is listed as questionable. What's he dealing with? Didn't practice. He's got an ankle. Yeah, looking at practice Thursday or Friday to see if he's going to suit up. So we'll see how he is going. If he doesn't play, I assume we slot in Jerry Jeudy. Maybe Brandon Ayuk with a favorable matchup against the Falcons. But I really hope he goes. That's going to be really interesting. As far as picking a winner here, I think it's obvious. I think we're gonna go with Raleigh. I don't think that's really even a question. Actually, I mean, the Stevenson household just got to put something on film for me to trust them again. I tried to go last week with, I think I went with both of them. 1 second, I actually didn't even know what I did. I went 3-2 last week in the predictions. So my worst week by far, maybe it was 2-3. Yeah, I actually did pick Ashley and Trevor last week, and then I picked myself, so it was 2-3 overall. And part of that was because I picked both of the Stevensons. So honestly, I'm just not gonna do it again. I mean, they've got to put 2 or 3 in a row together for me to take them. So Raleigh getting the win this week shouldn't be that tough. Benjamin could keep an eye on in that Bengals game. Really interesting to keep an eye on there. So going over to our second place team, which is Charlie against myself. Charlie kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place this week. He's kind of getting bye-fucked real hard. I do think the Lions are kind of getting their bye at the right time. They had a couple of big weeks, and then they just shit the bed against the Patriots. Part of that was what led me to getting less than 70 points last week with Jamal Williams getting held down. But Charlie's going to be without Derrick Henry as number 1 overall pick, and Amon-Ra St. Brown, who has just been a godsend for his team. Without both of them this week. But he does have Andy Isabella to pick up the slack if he wants to throw him in. Just if we look at we'll start with the quarterbacks like we always do. NFL, by the way, has this at 105 to 103 advantage for myself. Looking at the quarterbacks, Kyler Murray gets a really good matchup with Seattle. Kyler Murray, he's getting a lot of flack this season. He's very quietly a top 5 quarterback. I mean, he's hasn't had a stinker week. I mean, he hasn't looked good like on film, but he's putting up points, and he's got the rushing upside. Last week he had 42 rushing yards, which is the highest of the season. Every week so far he's had over 20 rushing yards, and the one that he didn't, he had 314 passing yards. Now he didn't score a touchdown, so that was tough. But that was against the Rams, who kind of have owned the Cardinals over the last couple years. But then the week against last week against, or 2 weeks ago against Carolina, 207 yards, 26 on the ground, 3 total touchdowns. He has thrown a pick in 3 out of 5 weeks. That's a little tough to stomach, but I mean, he's putting up consistent numbers. Joe Burrow, and Seattle, their defense is abysmal. It's awful. So if you're gonna have a week where you get right, this is the week. And I did in my dream team pick him to be the number one quarterback. I think they just sling the ball all over the yard. I think Hollywood has a big week. I mean, Seattle can't guard anybody. On the flip side, Burrow, quarterback 7 on the year. So he's kind of right there in that same conversation of just like, if you watched all of his games, or I think most of us have watched all of these games, because you're usually in the 3:30 window, or maybe even prime time with Burrow a little bit. So most of them have got an opportunity to watch all of their games, or most of their games. And it just doesn't look like Joe Burrow has been a productive quarterback this year, but very quietly, he's number 7, 18, 16, 23, 20, 17. Only has 1 week where he didn't cross 200 passing yards, and that was against Dallas when they were just sacking him left and right. And even then, I mean, he put up 16 points, had a touchdown, had some rushing yards, and he gets New Orleans, who is a tough defense, but I think the Bengals offense is good enough to overcome that a little bit, and the New Orleans offense can't stand it. They had a big week last week against Seattle, but everybody has a big week against Seattle. So I do like Kyler Murray kind of getting advantage of that matchup because they get that Seattle defense. That's really it. If they were both playing middle of the road teams, I may lean Burrow. Kyler does have the rushing upside, but against Seattle, that's a lot. It's a lot to overcome for Joe Burrow. Getting into the running backs, which up to this point has been where Charlie is making a living. His running backs are the reason he's the number 2 team, and honestly, outside of that 1 week where I think it was week 1 where Chubb and Henry didn't do anything, he could very well be 5-0 with just this running back core. Problem is they're not here, or at least one of them's not here. Derrick Henry out for the week, on a bye, getting some rest. So sorry to whoever he plays next week, because he's just gonna run roughshod over him. Actually, let's get a little sneak preview. Who is that? They get Indy next week, and Charlie will be playing Andrew. That'll be interesting. Anyway, getting back into it. So Lenny gets promoted from the flex spot to the RB slot, taking over for Derrick Henry. Pittsburgh not good. I think Lenny could have a decent day against them. Nick Chubb against New England is an interesting matchup. New England's got a lot of confidence coming into this game. I don't know necessarily about their defensive confidence, but they do have they've put together 2 good weeks out of just kind of nothing. They had Brian Hoyer go down against the Packers, and very well could have won that game if they had let Bailey Zappi throw the ball. What do you have to lose? And then last week, obviously against the Lions, was a real like classic New England get right spot. Everybody's writing them off, and they just come out. They shut out New England. They shut down that the number 1 scoring offense. Jamal Williams was held to 50 yards. I don't think they're holding Nick Chubb to 50 yards, but they can make his day a little tough. And then on the other side, Jonathan Taylor should, by all reports, be back. He didn't practice Wednesday. He was out there in non-contact jersey. He was kind of getting right, but he should be back. Hold on, I'm kind of reading through this. Obviously, Naheem Hines went down with a concussion. Limited participant, contact. Yeah, okay. All I was saying is hopefully he practices today or tomorrow. I do think Jonathan Taylor's coming back, and this is a real good spot for him to come back. I know they kind of struggled against the Jags in week 2, but that was in Jacksonville, where the Colts historically struggle. And even then, he had nine attempts for 54 yards, so he was efficient in that game. He wasn't getting the opportunities, he wasn't getting the touches. So hopefully he can get back to that week 1 performance he had against Houston there. And kind of a big time get right spot for Jonathan Taylor and Colts as a whole. They kind of pulled that Denver game out of their ass and won it in the worst game we've ever seen. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, I'm gonna be honest, I don't even know that he's come Sunday that he's gonna be in the lineup. I don't exactly know who would replace him, but he has been consistently losing touches. I mean, he was going into the last week the number 4 running back in fantasy, but so much of that has just come off the fact that he is just volume of touchdowns. 2-6, he had 7 touchdowns in the first 4 weeks. So that's pumped a lot of his production up. But I don't really have anybody to replace him with, so I may just have to rely on that again. That Kansas City Buffalo game is just going to be incredible. So I think we just take the flyer on that and hope for the best. And then we get into the wide receivers, and this is where I've kind of felt going into this, over the couple weeks of talking shit to Charlie, that I had the advantage. Mike Williams, CeeDee Lamb against Amari Cooper and DK Metcalf. Geno Smith is looking incredible, and because of that, DK Metcalf, who is really good, has put together a couple strong weeks here. The last 3 weeks, 15, 18, 14. Looking really good after coming out slow to start the season, and Geno kind of hitting his stride. So DK does scare me a little bit. Amari Cooper against New England. Amari Cooper just kind of seems like a touchdown machine. I mean, him and Njoku probably your favorite red zone targets, outside of handing the ball to Nick Chubb. So I mean, Charlie's kind of dependent on how good the Browns are going to do against the Patriots, which is kind of a tough task to rely on. But Amari Cooper's looked good. He's wide receiver 15 on the year. He's had 2 kind of stinker weeks. The other weeks, 20, 19, and 17. So he should be good there. And then we get to the tight ends, and kind of the just the epitome of why, unless you can get Kelsey or Andrews, don't draft tight ends early. I mean, I've drafted Waller in I think the 4th or the 5th round, and even that was a stretch because I ended up just trading him for a bench running back to have as an emergency. Gerald Everett is your tight end 9. He got very nearly goose egg last week, had 1 reception for 2 yards, but last week was the Austin Eckler show. So, kind of tough before that. I mean, he's had 2 touchdowns this season. He's had, some 60, 70 yard games. Looking good. On the other side, Kyle Pitts, tight end 23. Your point totals here: 2.9, 2.9, 11.2. Decent week against Seattle because everybody dominates against Seattle. 3. And then didn't play last week against Tampa Bay. So Kyle Pitts, and he gets a real tough matchup this week in San Francisco. He's got a really, really good offense. Then we get into the flexes. And this is where I think that Clyde Edwards-Helaire could get the bench, because I think Melvin Gordon is primed for a big time comeback week here. He gets to play against his old team, so we do get a revenge game. His old team is the 32nd ranked rushing defense in the NFL. His quarterback stinks. His offense stinks. And last week, now that he's the number 1 guy, 54 rushing yards, 49 receiving yards, 11.8 points. Didn't get in the end zone. But I do love Melvin Gordon this week, and that's why I think Clyde Edwards-Helaire could see himself on the bench. Melvin Gordon slotted in the RB2, and then we go with, Terry McLaurin, Michael Thomas, somebody, Christian Kirk. Maybe I give him another shot. Right now, he's riding the bench off of back-to-back just shithole performances. George Pickens on the other side. Really tough call against Tampa Bay, but Charlie doesn't really have anybody else to throw in, except for Andy Isabella. So, even pulling myself out of this kind of top down view of this, I do like myself against Charlie this week, and I like to rub myself against Charlie this week. So I'm gonna pick myself. Just the matchups here. I don't necessarily think my team is better, but my matchups are definitely better. Seattle, Jacksonville. The Buffalo one's tough, but Mike Williams is Mike Williams. CeeDee Lamb, I didn't even hit on him, but he does get the Eagles this week, and we'll probably get Darius Slay, and that could be a pretty tall order. in Sunday Night Football. The other thing I love about my team this week is I've got Jonathan Taylor going Sunday at noon. I've got Ryan Suckup going Sunday at noon. I've got Kyler Murray going Sunday at 4. At 3. Sorry, I was reading the Eastern time. Rams defense at 3. Clyde Edwards-Helaire at 3:30. And then prime time, baby. That's it. So Charlie's going to be done at 3 p.m. In fact, he's only got DK Metcalf going at 3 p.m. So I kind of like the idea of just getting to see what he does, and let's get the boys out there to match it. So I like myself. So far we got Riley and me winning this week. Going into third place, which is who was third place? It was Wade. Welcome back into the playoff picture, Wade. Welcome back into the projections. Wade gets John this week. Sorry, I need a coffee break. John's lost 4 in a row. That's all that really needs to be said. The website projected him at 0-13. I projected him 1-12 week 1, and it's very much looking like I'm gonna be correct. And I hate that, honestly. I want to pick him again. In fact, have I picked him again since then? No, I have not. So, sorry, John. The website's got this 114-100 in favor of Wade. John finally just done with the Russell Wilson show. And I don't blame him. He's just done with it. So we're going Geno Smith against Arizona, which I actually love. I think that game is going to be sneaky exciting. It sucks that it's on the same window as the Bills and Chiefs, because I think that has the potential to be the most exciting game of the afternoon window. But yeah, everybody's just going to watch Bills Chiefs because it's going to be incredible. Don't sleep on Arizona Seattle. Shootout. On the other side, Justin Herbert. I mean, he's Justin Herbert. We all know I love Justin Herbert. He's So he does get a tough matchup in Denver's defense. As much as we want to talk shit about Denver's offense, their defense is actually pretty solid. So tough matchup there, but he's only has 1 week where he failed to put up 20 points. 8th ranked quarterback in fantasy right now. And we get Justin Herbert in prime time, which that's just a treat. Everybody just get to enjoy that. Going down into the running backs here. Christian McCaffrey against the LA defense. I mean, LA defense is pretty good. They're kind of more of a pass rushing defense, but I mean, Aaron Donald is going to tackle anybody he wants to. Christian McCaffrey fully looks back. I mean, top 5 running back this year. His worst week was week 1. A lot of questions going into coaching changes, but we've seen in the past that interim coaches can kind of light a fire under their guys. So we'll see if they get that interim boost this week. And then on the other side, Raheem Moster. This is kind of where Wade's been struggling this year. Raheem Moster, Ramondre Stevenson. Which, as far as guys that you don't know, I love these guys that you don't know. Raheem Mostert coming off a big week last week, a touchdown, 113 yards rushing, added another reception. He was held out yesterday from practice. He looks like he's back today, so he should be good to go there. And that game against the Vikings, especially with if Tua or Teddy can't go, should be a pretty run heavy day. And that definitely screams Mostert. Ramondre Stevenson. I think last week I predicted in the Dream Team for Damian Harris to be the number 1 running back. Right idea, wrong running back. Which Ramondre wasn't. Once again, right idea. Detroit bad rush defense. Just wrong running back. Ramondre Stevenson 161 on the ground. Added a couple receptions for 14 yards. Cleveland has a pretty bad rushing defense. The Falcons ran it all over him. They've had a couple teams run it all over him this year. And Ramondre Stevenson looks like he's just the guy in New England now. Damian Harris is a nice change of pace, but Ramondre Stevenson looks like he's kind of fully taken over that role. So I think Ramondre Stevenson could have a big week this week. ETN finally looked like he took over the Jacksonville role, or at least took a share of it from James Robinson. 71 yards rushing last week, 43 through the air. The Jags couldn't get anything going against Houston of all teams. And this week he gets a pretty decent Indy defense in what could be a run heavy game, and Jacksonville trying to get back on track to what they look like in the first of the season. So, ETN still kind of a question mark. Last week was the first week we really saw him kind of take over the backfield. We'll see what he can do this week. And a lot of that coming from Dameon Pierce being on a bye. Obviously, Dameon Pierce, DeAndre Swift, that's tough. You're kind of waiting on them to get back to turn back into a three-headed monster with McCaffrey, Pierce, and Swift. Getting into the wide receivers, I mean, Justin Jefferson is the best wide receiver in football right now. It sucks that he's stuck with Kirk Cousins, but he is the most dominant wide receiver in football in Miami. Not great against the pass. We've seen them get just torched, but we have 3 games for Jefferson over 140 yards. Hasn't scored a touchdown since week 1. Well, he scored one on the ground against New Orleans, but hasn't scored a receiving touchdown since week 1 when he had 184 yards and 2 touchdowns. But just a reception and yards machine. And obviously, you're not going to keep him out of the end zone forever. He's going to get in the end zone at some point and kind of balance that back out. But Justin Jefferson is the best wide receiver in football. Courtland Sutton, also very good. He's just stuck with Russell Wilson, who looks like Jets Geno Smith. So who the fuck knows what's going to happen there? The Chargers not a good defense. A lot of injuries, really banged up. So maybe he can kind of get right there. Hopefully we get a shootout on Monday night. Wouldn't that be great? AJ Brown is AJ Brown. Jalen Hurts is playing out of his mind, which means that AJ Brown is playing out of his mind. Was held a little pedestrian last week, 4.7 points, but we know the upside. We know what he can do. The Dallas defense is really good, but we get AJ Brown and Jalen Hurts in Sunday Night Football. And then the other side, kind of the odd man out here, Romeo Doubs. I mean, do you not have other options? You have Devontae Smith, so that's a really interesting thing to keep an eye on there on the in the flex spot for Wade is Devontae Smith versus AJ Brown. Who are the Cowboys going to smother, and who's going to kind of be the left odd man out? Who's Jalen going to feed the ball to? It's actually really interesting. I didn't even catch that. That's fun. Romeo Doubs. I mean, I guess you really don't. I mean, there's a lot of running backs on the bench. Jesus Christ, Wade, your bench is Latavius Murray, Nyheim Hines, Jeff Wilson, Jacoby Myers is the only wide receiver I see. Alexander Madison, James Robinson, and Eli Mitchell. Which that's in your reserve slot, to be fair, but it's some wide receivers. I actually expect, if you're listening to this, Wade, this is what I would do. I'm not saying you have to do it, but this is what I would do. Is Devontae Smith and the wide receiver 2 slot, Jeff Wilson going into the flex spot, because I do think Atlanta is forced by the 49ers. Anyway, you do what you want to do with your team. That's what I would do. And then we have Mark, the David Njoku quietly been top 5 tight end over the last couple weeks. I had the big game against Pittsburgh in prime time where he touchdown at 89 yards. And then he's put together a back-to-back really, really solid weeks. Looks like he's one of Jacoby Brissett's favorite targets. So love that. And then Mark Andrews, you don't really have to say a lot about him. He's the second best tight end in fantasy behind Travis Kelce, who just put up 4 touchdowns. So the cliff for tight end is just massive. You get Kelce, Andrews, and then it's just right down. So David Njoku's solid. Mark Andrews is incredible. That's all I can really say about that. John running out Michael Pittman again. Maybe he gets the balls to slot in Curtis Samuel tonight on Thursday night against the Bears. I do think Carson Wentz could have a decent game. We talked about how shitty this game is going to be. I'm going to just go on a side tangent real quick, and it's not even a side tangent because it involves Curtis Samuel. We've talked ad nauseum about how shitty this game is going to be. Carson Wentz is okay. He's at least interesting. He's got deep play potential. The Bears defense is pretty good. It's not the best in the league. It's it's probably top 15. The Commanders defense is awful. They're terrible. I'm just saying. I don't know what Vegas has the total at. Hold on, I'm gonna pull it up right now. Bears. Yes, leave the site. I'm done. Vegas has the total set at 38. Yeah. Hammer the over. Hammer the over. Hammer the over. Yeah, I actually might take out a mortgage just to do that. Anyway, if that got you fired up to put Curtis Samuel in, and it's a 10-7 game, I'm Way's gonna win this week again. Which is tough to say. I want John to win real bad. Maybe Geno Smith can carry him to victory. I don't see the path. I really don't. So I'm sorry, John, but you're kind of approaching like Stevenson level of prediction territories where I need to see it before I can do it. That makes sense. So John taking the dub, or sorry, Wade taking the dub this week. Switching gears now into one of the more interesting matchups, the matchups between 3-2 teams to kind of put some more separation in the league. Andrew and Cameron. Andrew been kind of hot the last couple weeks, and honestly, once again, he started Gabe Davis hurt on a Monday night, and other than that, he could be right there with Charlie at 4-1. I got his number last week, but Andrew's looked real solid. Cameron, he's had a couple bad weeks, but a lot of that was Alvin Kamara being out. Tyler Lockett just popped the fuck off last week, 2 touchdowns, 100 yards. So as long as the Seahawks keep scoring, which he'll look good. But if we're actually going through the matchups here, by the way, NFL has has Andrew at 92. What are we missing? Hold on. Nobody's on a bye. Somebody hurt? Is somebody dead? I don't see why his total's that low unless Damien Harris is like legit out and they're projecting him at 0 points, or if they just now have him as the number 2 wholeheartedly. That's interesting. 92.5. What am I missing? Sorry for the dead air. Hold on. Jalen Hurts, Joe Mixon, Damian Harris, Tyler Boyd, Gabe Davis, Travis Kelce, J.K. Dobbins. Nobody's out. I mean, Damian Harris it's got to be Damian Harris. I assume. They have his projections up here. This is why I don't like the website, by the way, because it doesn't just show the projections. Oh, week 6 projected points 0. Yeah, that's it. So, imagining Tony Pollard getting slotted in there. Projection 7.3 points. So, yeah, I mean, or Najee, actually. That's dumb. Projection 12. So, when he gets that fixed, projections will be 117 to 104. Still an ass whooping, but not a 30-point ass whooping like they have it now. Anyway, back to the Jalen Hurts, tough matchup against Dallas. But once again, kind of Dallas's bread and butter being the pass rush, and Jalen Hurts being the mobile quarterback that he is, and a big mobile quarterback. He's one of the guys that can kind of try to equalize that. Jalen Hurts, number 3 quarterback in fantasy right now, behind Geno Smith. Is it Josh Allen and Geno Smith? Hold on. No, okay, Geno Smith dropped. Never mind. It's probably Josh Allen, and it's probably Patrick Mahomes on the other side, I assume. Oh, who's the number 2 quarterback? Jalen Hurts. So it's Josh Allen, obviously, is number 1. It's somebody in Jalen Hurts. Who am I missing? Oh, Lamar Jackson. Yep. Okay. It was Lamar Jackson. Anyway, Jalen Hurts should put up points. I mean, he's Dallas, like I said, Dallas pass rush is good, but he's good enough to evade it, make some plays with his legs. But he definitely has a pretty tough matchup here. Patrick Mahomes on the other side. Getting the Bills defense, who's still, I mean, they're still a little banged up. They're kind of recovering, but I mean, they're the number 2 against quarterback in fantasy right now. So tough matchup there. But anytime the Bills and Chiefs line up, you're just in for a treat. So we should have points, and fireworks there. Getting into the running backs, Joe Mixon, Alvin Kamara, Saquon Barkley, and Damien Harris. There's an obvious advantage here, and it's Kamara and Barkley. Kamara looks back. Last week he had 20 points, 103, and it was all yardage. 103 yards, 91 on the ground. He's just a touch machine. Had 6 receptions last week. So he's just gobbling up touches in that New Orleans offense. Tyler Lockett Saquon in London. He played through some injuries. He just hasn't put up a bad. His worst week is 10.3 at 72 yards. The only reason it was that bad is he just didn't get in the end zone against Carolina. Saquon looks incredible. Joe Mixon, he's getting just the volume that Kamara is. He's just not getting the production on the back end. I mean, every week, he's averaging like 2.3 yards per carry or something ridiculously low. But he's carrying it 20 times. Last week, 14 rushes, 3 more targets, so 17 total touches in a pretty low scoring game. The week before that against Miami, I think he had like 20 touches or something like that. Only had 61 yards on the ground and 13 through the air. He just gets so many touches in that offense. Damon Harris, like we said, is out, so we'll just go ahead and look at Najee against the number 1 rush defense in the NFL. So your only real hope there is you get some production through the air, and with Pittsburgh, I just really don't see it. So even if you are stuck putting in Najee, I think you have to take a long, hard look at Tony Pollard, who kind of taken over that backfield from Zeke. But he also has a really tough matchup in Philadelphia, so kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place here. Going into the wide receivers, Tyler Lockett kind of came back last week, wide receiver 8 overall this year. 2 touchdowns. It was first time in the end zone this year. First time we really heard his name called. But week 2 he had 100 yards against San Francisco. Week 3 against Atlanta he had 76. Week 4 against Detroit he had 91. Last week he had 104. So he's just putting up solid production. As long as Geno Smith can kind of stay in the flow, he should be good. Stephon Diggs is Stephon Diggs. He's just gonna eat this week. Even last week during the Gabe Davis show, he had 102 yards and a touchdown. Obviously, he had the 40-point Monday night heart just dagger gone. On the other side, it's like my thing with Andrew's receivers, right, is I like both of them in like risky situations, if that makes sense. Like if I know I'm gonna lose, which for the projections Andrew is, fuck it, a slot in Gabe Davis, maybe he puts up 40 points, which he did last week. He put up 30, but it was on 3 receptions, 171 yards, and a touchdown. The Randy Moss stat line. I don't like Gabe Davis when I need 15 points. Doesn't feel like it works out. And kind of the same with Tyler Boyd. Like I kind of like him as just like this weird like little flyer out there, because you got T Higgins, you got Jamar Chase just eating up touches. Tyler Boyd is great when there's if one of them is out, or hell, let me take a shot on somebody. So I don't love this setup here. I would personally go for Adam Thielen, I think, in here. Thielen over one of them, probably over Boyd. Thielen's kind of been held quiet this year because Justin Jefferson's taken up touches, but Miami's real bad defense. So that's the way I'm going. But you're not putting Dortch in there. You're not putting DJ Moore in there. So unless you can find somebody hidden on the waivers and whatever. Travis Kelce is just 4 touchdowns. 4 touchdowns as a tight end. 25 yards, 4 touchdowns. Just stupid numbers. 30 points dead even. On the other side, you have Cameron taking a flyer on Hayden Hurst. Freiermuth has been his tight end, and Steelers can't pass. Doesn't really matter. Hayden Hurst has been okay. He's got back-to-back touchdowns and back-to-back weeks. So looking like see if we can keep that stretch going. But the stars of the show here: Kamara, Barkley, and Stephon Diggs, and Patty Mahomes. Let's not write off Patty Mahomes in there. I just think he kind of gets canceled out by Jalen Hurts on the other side. So, Cameron's pulling the dub this week again. He's going to move to 4-2. Andrew's going to drop to 3-3, and it'll paint some real interesting pictures for the playoff race. We're kind of coming up on the back half of the season where it starts to get a little tighter. There's just less time to win. Playoff spots are gonna get tight, and only 4 teams make it out of 10. Used to be half the league, not anymore. I don't know that 500 is gonna get it done now. So Cameron pulls up, gets a little closer to that spot, takes down Andrew. And then the last game we have, it is the last game. We have Tua Tunga all over 0-5 versus Tim, who is coming off just back-to-back incredible weeks. Started 0-3, is now 2-3 after putting up the top or close to the top score in back-to-back weeks. Whatever. Back-to-back weeks, he started Devin Singletary over Josh Jacobs, over I think one last week it was Breece Hall. He just can't seem to get the combination right to just pull out the win. This week, at least the picture's a little bit clearer for him. Josh Jacobs is on a bye. Devontae Adams also on a bye. Obviously, the Raiders there. So his bench is Cam Akers, Tyler Algier, Garrett Wilson. And I think you're very warranted in benching all three of those for Breece Hall, Kenneth Walker, and Devin Singletary. I'm done with Devin Singletary. Done with him. Sick of him. Tired of him. Don't want to see him. So me personally, I would slot in Cam Akers, but I don't hate the Singletary pick. Singletary is going to get you 8 to 12 points. Cam Akers could get you 30, could get you 2. I say that. He's got one good week. So never mind. Keep in Singletary, get your guaranteed 9 points, and let's go on about our day. Aaron Rodgers against the Jets. Aaron Rodgers looked poo-poo this year, but he doesn't have the Tua handcuff there to throw in. I guess you're going with Rodgers. I mean, the Jets don't look great. They don't look bad. Then Lambeau, I guess, is your one saving grace there. And I don't know who is available. I mean, Russell Wilson's available. That's it. So, I mean, if you look at the individual matchups for them, I mean, Breece Hall against the Packers, that's a pretty tough matchup. Breece Hall had a dominating week last week. 197 total yards, a touchdown, 27 points, almost 26.7 points. So Breece Hall kind of just taking over that offense. But even Michael Carter had a good week. I think the Jets just popped off. Obviously, they hung 40 points on Miami, so that had a lot to do with it. Kenneth Walker, once again, coming off a big week. Arizona, not the best defense in the world, so I love that spot there. Just real solid production. Tyreek Hill, I discussed it a little bit with Jalen Waddle. He hasn't quite had the same production drop off that Waddle has without, with missing Tua, and obviously there's a lot of history there with Tua and Jalen and Waddle about why, he may like to throw to one over the other. But I mean, once again, if you are missing your starting quarterback, even your second option, you're gonna take a drop off. So, we'll see what Tyreek can do against the Minnesota defense, who's pretty middle of the road, like everything in Minnesota, not named Justin Jefferson. Chris Godwin, I think, is poised for a big week. Pittsburgh is bad. Tom Brady is good. Comes down to just that. Talked about Mike Evans being the number one target, being the number one option there. So I think Chris Godwin should actually have a pretty good week. He's looked solid in his comeback. Still kind of recovering from that injury. And then I talked about Devin Singletary. I mean, I guess, and it's kind of like me with Clyde. He's disappointed me a couple weeks. He looks like he's kind of starting to take a step back in that offense. There's rumors he's not going to be there for much longer. McCaffrey could show up in Buffalo and really kind of screw things up. But when you have a game with the kind of magnitude of the Bills Chiefs and the amount of points that could be scored in there, you really just want to have a slice of the pie. So after saying all that, I'm fully talked into Devin Singletary. Leave him in. And then if you go over to Tim's team, I mean, Tim struggled out of the gate, as I think an understatement, but Josh Allen, like 35 points last week, hasn't had a game. I mean, his worst game was 23.5 against Baltimore. So even in the weeks where the Bills looked bad, like because they don't have a running game, because Devin Singletary kind of stinks. James Cook fumbled the first snap of the season, first snap of his career. Josh Allen just slings the ball all over the yard. So, he's going to do it again. Alvin Cook looked all the way back last week, had 2 touchdowns, 94 yards. He's kind of been taking this wishy-washy alternating weeks thing, 12-5, 13-9, 25. But he gets a bad Miami defense this week. So look for him to kind of get back to that. Austin Eckler. I mean, what the fuck, Austin Eckler? Didn't have a game with over 40 rushing yards. His best game in weeks 1 through 3 was the 39 rushing performance. In the air, which where Austin Eckler's made a living, his highest output was 55. 0 touchdowns through the first 3 weeks. He went 9.2, 13.9, 9.3. And in the last 2 weeks, he has 5 touchdowns. But what the fuck? He gets Denver, who is a much better defense than he's played. He played Houston and Cleveland. Much better defense than he's played, but I mean, what the fuck? Last week, 173 rushing yards, 26 more through the air. So what is that? 199 yards. Couldn't get him one more yard to get him over 200, but Jesus Christ, Austin Eckler. And that's part of why Tim has just dominated the last 2 weeks. Hollywood, I think, is poised for a monster week. Seattle's bad. Kyler's good. Hollywood's good. Once again, Seattle's bad. So, Hollywood should pop off this week. Olave, I know he had the bad head injury this week. 3rd of 5 stages in concussion protocol, so it's really still up in the air of whether or not he's even going to play this week. If he doesn't, you got to imagine he slots in Rashad Bateman, I guess. Maybe Alec Pearson, and then you throw in like Brian Robinson into the flex, which you don't want to do that because he plays tonight. Khalil Herbert also plays tonight. Michael Gallup, that's the one we want. Michael Gallup's going in there. But keep an eye on that. And Gallup's got the tough matchup against the Eagles. That would suck if he has to do that. Because he's kind of second fiddle to CeeDee Lamb in a tough matchup. That sucks. Taysom Hill, almost a Tyreek Hill, tight end. I didn't realize Waller was on a bye, which makes sense because Jacobs and Adams are on a bye. But Waller, missing him makes more sense why you went with Taysom. Obviously the potential to play quarterback, running back, whatever. I mean, hell, the tight end, he was a tight end 1 last week with 112 yards rushing and 3 rushing touchdowns. Didn't catch a pass. I think he threw a pass, but he didn't catch one. So Taysom Hill, a fun little slot in there. I also think Zach Ertz is just going to... If you have a Cardinal this week, put him in. That's basically what I'm getting at. If you have a Cardinal, put him in, because they're all going to eat against Seattle. Alec Pearson, the flex slot, is... decision. Last 2 weeks, 10, 12. God, that's what he looks like. Jesus Christ. If you haven't seen a picture of Alec Pierce, go ahead and pull that up. Anyway, I don't know anything about Alec Pierce. I don't pay attention to the Colts unless it's Alec Pierce is there. Anyway, Tim's gonna get his third win in a row, get back to 500. Trevor's gonna go to 0-6. It's gonna be really sad. NFL the website has this at 112 to 103 in favor of Trevor, actually, but I think he's been projected to win most. The only thing I like about Trevor this week is his downfall has been putting the right players in, and he doesn't really have a choice this week. He's got his players mapped out of who he can play. Doesn't have a lot of options, so keep an eye out for Trevor. If I'm setting the spread, I'm probably setting it at like 6.5 for Tim. And I would probably take Trevor against the spread. I don't know that I'd take him straight up, though. Once again, I got to see it first. So, just to run it back and recap real quick, we have Riley taking down Ashley. We have myself taking down Charlie. We have Cameron taking down Andrew. We have Tim taking down Trevor. And we have Wade taking down John. So, this has been your week 6 recap. I don't know if I introduced it earlier and I've said week 3 because I've said week 3 the first time. The first take of the last 4 weeks I've said week 3, and I don't know why. But this has been your week 6 recap. Good luck this week, everybody, and let's enjoy some football.